All right. So, um, Christine, to the woman who has saved more water than any one person in New Mexico, probably, Miss Christine Chavez. Thank you.
That is so funny. That's absolutely not true. But it is.
I'm not so sure.
No, so I think everyone knows me, but my name is Christine Chavez and I manage the City of Santa Fe's Water Conservation Program. And certainly the program has, I feel, been very successful because we have a lot of public support, a lot of public buy-in, and then we partner with the experts, with the Santa Fe Watershed Association, with the county, with, the community college. We have these partnerships that really allow us to go above and beyond the staff of just myself and two others in the Water Conservation Office. And so it's a great community to work in. I absolutely love my job. And sadly, right now, with all of the issues happening on the Colorado River, all of these opportunities have flooded in for water conservation. It's like, oh my gosh, we have to save water. Like today, and it's like, oh, it takes years to build a water conservation program. And so, interestingly enough, there's a lot of work at the state level to try to, work collaboratively on programs. And so, I mean, there's a lot of legislation right now that even, an organization I'm a part of, the New Mexico Water Conservation Alliance, has put forward on, a non-functional turf. There's regionalization bills. I mean, it's just a really interesting time. And I think things have to move quickly and collaborations have to come together quickly. And we all just, need to, I think, move quicker. So, so I'm
agree.
happy. This group has been great, Carl, and thank you for inviting me back. There's a lot of familiar faces for me, and because I work closely with most all of you. But I don't know if before we kind of jumped into my presentation, is there anything, or maybe we do it afterwards, for questions for me or, background or anything that anybody would like for me to kind of jump into first?
We're ready for you.
Good. Well, I wasn't ready. I thought I was like second on the agenda. So I was.
Well, yeah, do you need some time? Okay.
Okay. So there's a couple different intersections here that I want to just try to talk about because all of you in your work, if you can connect to our program, I just want to give you the background to do so. So currently, the Water Conservation Committee, well, for a long time now, has had an advisory committee, the Water Conservation Committee, and it's, there's 10 different individuals there that represent different stakeholders. There's one that represents both the city and the county that sits on that group, and it's chaired by Councilor Romero Worth. And for me, it has just been an extraordinary opportunity to work with the individuals in this group. Really, really talented, really, really vested in the issues, and really want to come together and do something. And so we have an outdoor subcommittee, a commercial subcommittee, and a joint city-county committee to work on different issues. And Michelle Hunter and I from the county have just connected, gosh, maybe about a year ago already, and are trying to manage the group of the joint city water committee. So that's members of the Water Policy Advisory Committee, which I know Carl is on that group, and members of the Water Conservation Committee. And so this year, there is a tremendous amount of work that both committees are going to be involved in, and certainly myself and Michelle and other groups to change code related to the way we communicate drought. Right now we have the drought monitor, we have the front page of the paper, we have lots of different ways that information gets out. And so internally, we've been piloting a tool called the Water Resources Indicator that will allow us to communicate on a seasonal basis what level of drought we're in and what the community response, needs to be at that point. And so I really am hoping that the community can help me develop, those strategies, and that we can work, in lots of different groups to get at that information. And so I'm going to be looking to this group and many others that you are all associated with. But just a heads up that group, that piece of the work is coming. We've also taken on the Santa Fe 2100 plan. And so I know that's come to this group in pieces, and the WPAC, but Water Conservation is taking the lead on that now. And I'm excited because I think that all the public input that we get for the water resources indicator can then feed into the input for the adaptation strategies for the Santa Fe Water 2100 plan. And then hopefully Michelle Hunter and I can work together on the county piece of that also. But my goal is in the next 2 years to develop jointly the water resources indicator with the county, to adopt the Santa Fe Water 2100 plan with the county, and to co-write the 5-year water conservation plan with the county. And that's a big difference from anything that's ever happened before. But I really feel like that's been the goal of the city and the county working together on water conservation. And even though that's limited in the fact that it's just the county utility and, the city of Santa Fe utility, it may allow opportunities to branch out into those other parts of the county eventually, or for the county to acquire the resources to build the programs out further. So I'm really—
Christine, let me stop for a second. I'm not familiar with the person who is NMARNG environment, so we would like to, could you introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, this is Kiara Takis with the New Mexico Army National Guard Environment Department, and we're just sitting in.
Okay, great. Cool. How'd you find out about us?
Through Pam Hess.
Okay, great. Welcome aboard. Okay, Christine, continue. Sorry for the interruption.
No, not at all. And again, if you missed the introduction, my name is Christine and I manage the city's water conservation program. Lots of work with the county. I think that's where it intersects with this group as well and your interests. But we had been talking about green infrastructure projects and, things that we might be able to consider. And we tapped into an expert out of Arizona, Catlo Shipik, who heads the watershed management group. And it's kind of interesting. Catlo and others here in Santa Fe are all really good friends, all of our friends: Reese Baker, Aaron Kaufman, Rich Schrader, Andy Otto. I think you know Catlo pretty well. And so we're tapped into Catlo. I was introduced to him, through that network. And he's been a wonderful counterpart. He's very, very busy, but I just try to kind of tap into his resources. And I'm going to share some of the resources that he has allowed me to forward to this group. But the most interesting thing about Catlo, and the place where I feel we need to do a little bit more work, is to understand the relationship that he developed with the city of Tucson. Because that's where we would come in. It's, a nonprofit, kind of partnering with the city to, work together on a common goal. And he's been able to do a ton of work. But the first resource that I just want to show all of you, and I sent all this to Carl, and he's going to send it all out to you guys. So let me just pull up the first thing I want to show you. Hope it works. Okay, are you guys seeing this white paper? Okay, great. Well, I did good. So I think we need to spend some time on this. This is a paper that was written that talks about that relationship and the pieces that needed to come together, some of the funding mechanisms, and I need to spend more time on this as well. But I think it's a place for us to start, understanding what types of partnerships, partnerships, funding mechanisms would we need to have in place. And, are we going to use, maybe the joint committee to work on that? Is this group going to partner with the city? We just have to kind of figure out those logistics, especially if we look for some of this funding out there right now that's available, or if we, are looking at grants. And then the second thing I want to show all of you is kind of funny, but it's just this email. And can you guys all see this email? Okay, so I sent this over to Carl, and this is just a wealth of information. So what's attached is that report that I just showed you, but then there's a presentation slide deck, and that is really, really helpful. And I could even bring it up, but it's got a lot of Tucson, specific things. But as you go through that, I think you'll be like, oh, we could do that here in Santa Fe. There's, the rain garden care handbook. I mean, you guys may all be familiar with some of these, the Build Your Own Basin project. And the city right now is working with the Santa Fe Watershed Association. And luckily we made that partnership because Julie Hasty brings a lot of this experience into the program. And so we're working on things like Build Your Own Basin and stuff in our education program right now. I just finished watching this HOA water savings YouTube video because we're working a lot in different neighborhood pilots. And this video was great about, how you work governance of a neighborhood to get something, supported. So anyway, I mean, there's a whole bunch of different links on, funding, different programs that we could try to consider. And so I just kind of want to throw it out there. I think our next steps are really to try to let some of these things happen. Right now we're working on a bunch of different things with the county, and maybe this group decides, what are we really trying to accomplish when we talk about green infrastructure projects? Is that an education-based program? Is that, supportive rain garden work in the city? What exactly is it, that we want to try to prioritize? And then I think we try to kind of weave it into the processes that we have in place and, really, really get it together. I mean, if we would have been talking about this 2 years ago, it would have been kind of a long stretch because I didn't have Michelle over there. There was this, gap with the county and, the way that we could partner. But now Michelle is here and she's got a full plate. But I mean, I think if we are strategic, just strategic and leverage what we're trying to do, and fit these principles in. So, with that said, I think, it's good to just have an open conversation about, what we're thinking. And hopefully I provided enough information, and, and Catlow will come, but I really want to pick that. Let's just be really, picky about when we bring him in, because we would want to just get his expertise on, we've got this project, how can we make it better? What pieces are we missing, kind of thing.
This is really, and I agree with you so much in terms of this is something we need to act on now and get moving on and do things. And I just think there's going to be some opportunities, and actually it's going to be around La Cienega, because there are a number of things that are kind of taking place simultaneously that will all involve water and conservation. Just for everybody's understanding, is that we have approximately 12,000 wells in Santa Fe County. 10,000 of those are in the county, 2,000 are within the city. And while the city does this amazing job of conservation, there really is no connection to all those well owners. And this is where it's just a missing link. And I guess I'm going to kind of morph into the Santa Fe Water Policy Advisory Committee drought plan, because this is an example, but I think we're going to be able to address it. So I've been on that committee for a couple of years now. It'll be 2 years in April, and it meets. There's some really bright people. Nothing has been really done or accomplished, with all these really smart people. And so one of the things we did early last year was worked on a drought plan. And Emily Wolf and I were putting something together. And then we came to the point where we wanted to do something with it. We didn't have any ability. We didn't have a Christine. And so we battled that. We just kind of ignored it for a while. But just as of this week, actually this afternoon, we have a Water Policy Committee meeting. And we're going to review a letter to the county commission to really bring this to the forefront in terms of conservation, stormwater management, and all the other things that we really need to do to conserve water. And I think really, once people understand, have an opportunity to learn about what limited water resources we have, I think we do have an opportunity to really get them involved and join in with really doing what we can to save water. Now we have someone just came on board, John Dupuy, who is, hi, John.
How are you?
Good. Any news?
What news specifically are you interested in?
What's your future holding these days?
My last day at the county in the office is, I believe, 17th, and then I'm taking a little time off, and I'll start at the city on March 6th.
Okay, what are you going to be doing there?
Public Utilities Director.
Wow. Okay. And Michelle's got a whole lot more stuff on her plate now. Can we help you, Michelle? In any way we can, please let us know. Congratulations, John. And it looks like we're going to continue to have a pretty good relationship with you, I hope.
I agree. I mean,
All
that's
right, cool.
what I hope to accomplish.
Cool, that's very cool. So, Christine, getting back to this water, now this is where I've got these crazy ideas. And so there's three things happening right now in La Cienega. One, we have the well monitoring program, which is a county. We've got the Bureau of Geology and Mineral Resources and Amy Ewing, who is a consultant involved with that. So now the history of this is that in the 1990s, when they did the La Cienega watershed conditions, there was a requirement that anybody that put in a well had to have that well metered and provide information on water usage to, and I think it was to the county and to the OSE. Well, about 5 or 6 years ago, we realized one of our board members went down to check on how this thing was going, and it's never been done. And so that was a little upsetting, to say the least, because we've had approximately, I'm guessing, around 400 homes that have come into this area in that period of time from 1990 until now. And so what the county did, I mean, we wrote a very firm letter to the county and asked them to address this. And 5 years later, now 6 years later, we now have a sort of a plan. And what it entails is increasing the number of wells. Now, the Bureau of Geology and Mineral Resources has been conducting research in this area for a number of years, on a number of probably a half dozen wells, maybe a dozen. And so they have information, and now they want to expand that. See, what the county, and again, this is like it's still in process. We're still trying to figure out exactly how this thing is going to work. But my feeling is what they're going to try and do is measure the level of the aquifer and use that as a baseline in terms if there's too much water being used. And I'm not using the right terms, but to keep track of the level of the aquifer. And then to address certain people who are obviously using more water than they should. It's pretty easy to go around our village and find those people who have all of a sudden put in a large farm, and they don't have water to do that. And often it's just a matter of education. So that's one thing. We've got the well monitoring program. And to me, that's going to provide a whole lot of hydrogeological information that's going to be very valuable to us to understand. I mean, one of the things I always go back to is what Stacy Timmon said at one point. She said, at a community meeting, she said, how can you plan for water when you don't know how much you have? And so I thought that was pretty smart. And so this is an example or an opportunity for us to gather information on what water we have in La Cienega and La Cienega. And I think what everybody understands is it's odd because of the volcanic channels and tubes and things that are involved. And so it's gonna be interesting, but it'll be important. So that's one thing. Now, the second part is many of the tasks that are involved with the pipeline coalition, the return flow pipeline that the city of county is working on. And so there is going to be probably, I would say, 6 or 8 different tasks that are pertaining to the La Cienega Springs as major tributaries to the Santa Fe River. And so that becomes a really important part of gathering more information. And then on top of that, is the community has, and this is where Michelle and I are going to become very good friends, is we have $150,000 to do water master planning. And to me, this is where I'm going to tap into every one of you to ask you what should we include? How should we include the information about developing kind of a model for water master planning for a community? And that's where conservation and rain gardens and rain barrels and all those kinds of things become, to me, an integral part of water master planning. So and so I look at La Cienega almost as a demonstration project where we could identify certain locations or certain things. We could expand the Adopt Arroyo program out of the city into the county. That would be one of the things I would love to see because certainly we have a whole lot of arroyos and anything we can do to slow that water down and help it recharge the aquifer is something we should do. And so these things are all in motion right now, but there's going to come a point where we're all going to be able to contribute and participate in this process and do something I think that is timely. And again, you're exactly right, Christine. This is the time to do it. And all these conservations, all of a sudden, yeah, the river's drying up. Guess what? Now we better do some conservation. So it's a little bit of the dog chasing the tail, whatever it is. But and again, I think we've got the right people. And now we got this other guy, got a ringer over at the city utilities. And so that's going to be a really nice thing to have. So what other things do we want to talk about in terms of conservation, green infrastructure? Because I'm kind of rambling.
I have a few questions.
Sure.
So is the interest in green infrastructure directly related to the $150,000 that's been allocated for water master planning? Or I just need to understand where this piece fits in. Is this, or is this just an idea, like the domestic well program, or, that eventually the city and county should sort of work on together? I mean, I'm just trying to understand.
If there's money there now is what you're saying.
I'm sorry, Carl, what was that?
To see if there's money now to do things rather than going through all the different approvals to get money from the city and county. Is that what you're saying? That money could it be used for green infrastructure?
I think it's just to understand, where this piece fits. Is this group interested in pursuing green infrastructure underneath that 150K funding? Or is this something that you think we should be working on along with domestic wells? Because water conservation has, we develop an annual scorecard and we stick to that plan as closely as we can. But these conversations have to happen so that we can get them on the next, plan. And like Michelle and I, we've got to work to the WRI. We've got to work the Santa Fe 2100. She's got to work within the lower Santa Fe River stuff. And so I'm just trying to think of where do we want to try to jointly go after funding to try to do some of the specific green infrastructure work, or I'm just trying to get more direction.
Well, I mean, these are all great questions, and I'm not sure I can answer them right now because I think this is still kind of the beginning of this process. And certainly those are the things we need to identify and really start to work on. And again, your expertise, I mean, the things you just listed, um, uh, you and Michelle certainly can take leadership roles in terms of helping us support what you guys need to do in a sense. Um, does that make sense?
It does, and I think that's the approach that we should take, or I think that's reasonable for Michelle and I, is to, you know, look at the projects that we've got working right now and try to integrate this into that, as opposed to like a whole separate, initiative. Say, I think that's where it's more difficult to support.
Down the road, I hope that we'll be able to take advantage of some of the things that you and Michelle have put together. I think that's a better way of putting it. I've gotten ahead of myself a little bit, which sometimes I do. And this is not like tomorrow or next week or the next 6 months. This is something that will be down the road. And so to have you and Michelle working on things that we can use practically, that we can gain from and use out in the field, I guess is something I see down the road. Taking your ideas and putting them into action and figuring out how to do that. And that money may be able to be used for that. So again, that's down the road. It's not anything that's going to happen anytime soon. I apologize for kind of jumping ahead of myself, which I do sometimes.
That's okay. These conversations have to start a year in advance sometimes.
Right. No, I agree.
But I'm glad, this group, if you can continue to keep me in mind and, just make sure I can listen in on these things. And then that way I can connect them, where it's appropriate. But I do think we're going to be doing a lot of really great work, and some of these things are going to be integrated. And so I think we'll just keep on, reporting out on our progress. And I appreciate, you guys listening to me today. And I think John's had his hand up for a little while. So John,
Oh, sorry. John, I'm sorry. John, please. We lost him.
Thanks.
Hey, John.
So I was just going to try and add to that, having had the interaction with you, Carl, initially relative to at least something intended from the master plan. Agua Fria had completed a master plan, and I think it was 2017 approximately, whenever they had the sewer, and then the water was shortly thereafter. And since then, they have been incredibly successful in being able to point to it and identify numerous subsequent projects. Even when the funding for one is acquired, it's not expended yet, and they're already asking for funding for the next one, because it's part of a holistic approach. It's just much more well received whenever they're asking for additional funds, especially when they haven't spent some that they just received. And it's easy to sell, it's easy to defend, it's easy to end up being successful in having funds used for projects that are falling into the category that we're discussing. There is a need that I think to identify what those capital projects are that are related to conservation. But ultimately, Carl's right, there may be some part that is doing some work immediately, but at least the component of identifying, at least the next 20 years, potentially longer. It all depends how the community identifies what their goals are. But having those projects with a scope, a cost estimate, and part of a cohesive end result are like the factors that made Agua Fria very successful in acquiring, and still today acquiring funds for those type of projects. So that's the intent, with at least a component of it.
Okay. Sounds good. Sounds really good, actually. I think that's the way, it's one of those things that in my head, I do get ahead of myself and I want to do all these wonderful things, but I'm really hopeful. And I think this is actually to somewhat the extent, the intent of the well monitoring program is to take what we learned from La Cienega and apply it to other communities. Because everybody needs to start looking at their water use and what they can do to conserve and protect it. Another thing that I don't think the county's ever done, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, the city did the low flow toilets and did things as conservation measures. And that's really something that the county hasn't done. And actually, Senator Stefanik I talked to recently mentioned that. She said the county should do something like that. And so I think that may be something with the Water Policy Advisory Committee can bring forward and suggest that this be part of a plan, just to kind of almost announce it. Or it's one of those things I don't think that people in the county have as much a recognition of what they can do to contribute to help save water. So,
Carl?
yeah.
So my understanding is from talking to my city councilor that there's no program for low flow toilets in Santa Fe anymore. That was initiated by Mayor Koss and it's gone, as I understand. So Christina, maybe you can clarify that.
The toilet retrofit program is no longer in existence, but we do have an extensive rebate program that covers different types of toilets, washing machines, dishwashers, et cetera.
Okay.
But
That doesn't carry over to the county at all, right?
no. But I mean, we're hoping, to get there. I mean, working jointly and acquiring the resources on the county end to administer a program. I mean, you just don't have anybody over there who can handle all that. There's only so much Michelle and I can do, but I think these planning efforts that we're working on now really set the stage for, the county to justify the need for, somebody to manage this kind of work. And it really is a full-time job. I'll just say it's not, it's hard to,
So this brings up Michelle and John. I mean, there was some discussion about adding a staff person. Do we have a status of that now, or is it still being considered?
We have a strategic staffing plan that we were working with the deputy county manager to implement, and it's really been intense with the union and negotiating through some of the what I would consider very basic provisions. Just getting our operators more pay and competitive pay, where we should be on the same page. Like, it should be a no-brainer, but there's still slow progress. And so it's not fallen off the radar, but it hasn't received attention because of that focus on what are the basic core needs initially.
It's on a back burner is what you're saying.
That's right.
So we need to bring it up to the front burner.
Sure.
Okay, so that in that letter we're writing to the county commission, we do mention that. So maybe that would get some attention with that. But you're exactly right. Christine, we need that person. We need that kind of commitment by the county to make this thing happen. So,
and what would make that a really exciting job is that, not only is it the Santa Fe utility, but it's all the different parts of the county. And every part of the county has a different challenge and would require a different conservation response. And so it's, it's not as simple as it sounds. It sounds like you need somebody with even more experience who can really diversify their work so that, you could really say you're working across the county on water conservation. So
that'd be fascinating, wouldn't it? Bobby.
Christina, so when you were talking about Agua Fria Village and how they created the list of projects, so is there something that the city has like that, or are you working with the community to develop something like that? And like you pointed out, there are different issues along the whole watershed, in the watershed. So because I live in the city, how do I find out what you're doing besides rain gardens, like the things that are already done? What's coming up? Is there a place to look at what you're doing?
And your question is specific to doing in La Cienega, or doing in the county as a whole, or something different?
Well, okay, so not the county as a whole, but like, how do we create these lists of projects for the various parts of the river and watershed? And we have to be working with the various different riparian communities, like to
Right.
figure out what's happening, like what's needed.
So-
La Bajada is very different than La Cienega and La Cieneguilla and so on. But also the city, I'd like to know what's, like, is there a program like that for communities in the city to be engaged with conservation? So I'm thinking about the whole picture, but
Right.
also how do we, in working with different groups to do
Yeah.
this.
And it's easy to go back to the analogy of Agua Fria. Even within Agua Fria, there's different groups. The Water Association and then the Historic Village sometimes are in tension with one another. But ultimately, they both live in the same community. They both know how to come together and address the concerns in a systematic way, especially whenever they have some guiding document. So Michelle and I will go to the Nancy Rodriguez Community Center and talk to the group about the next streets that we're going to do sewer rehab on, because we have more money coming in than we can spend. And so seeing that process being so successful, and it empowers the community members to lobby for themselves with something very impactful and meaningful. Like
Right.
they can actually point to something, and it's the kind of reference that legislators are expecting. Like, show me the master plan that identifies that I need a scope and I need a cost estimate. Otherwise, I don't know how much to give you or what I'm giving it to you for.
Right.
And I had always kind of thought about that for La Cienega region, Lower Santa Fe region. But it wasn't until this group was put together as a result of the return flow pipeline efforts that, to me, that was the first true coming together of a very significant component of the collective user groups within that area. The
Mhm.
Pueblos, I think, could be more represented, but it is difficult to get them to the table sometimes. But there's been a lot of care in trying to figure out how to engage with them. So I'm just very optimistic about that. Is what enables understanding what the problems are. And then once you accomplish that from the collective group, then you have what the master plan needs to provide projects that solve those problems.
Got
So
it.
it just comes subsequent to it. Like, you have to know what you're trying to fix before you can get a project that fixes it.
Well,
Well
yeah,
spoken.
yeah. I mean, I have expressed this in this group before, but I have a lot of frustration with the city because there are all kinds of things that I see in my neighborhood that require a curb cut, and getting a curb cut, as I understand it, is impossible. So and that's just a little piece there. So that's the city. How do like, is there, like Agua Fria Village is amazing, they've got William Mee, and they've got a whole amazing organization there that they're really together. But as far as the city goes, there's nothing like that I know of. and then La Cienega, La Cieneguilla, and things like that. I don't know either if there are, so is that part of our project then, that we should be trying to find or help develop these water, like a water board for each of those areas or something? That's a question.
I would turn to Michelle for that, because she put together the RFP with a lot of support from the coalition. And everything that I've seen related to that is that it was very inclusive and it was very well put together because it wasn't rushed. Even though we would have wanted it to be faster, if there needed to be more time so that one particular comment could be fielded and addressed, everything I saw was that kind of time and care was being taken. But ultimately, it's forthcoming. We'll see how well it pans out into identifying all the problems.
And I mean, just to be straight up, I can't take credit for that. That was Carl and the group that did that. And so I will certainly give credit where credit is due, and that is to the La Cienegans who were willing to spend the time that they needed to spend on it. And frankly, I was just trying to catch my breath and was very welcoming that I was very happy that they were able to, spend the time that they needed on it. That is working its way through purchasing right now. It's a bit of a black box as far as I can tell, but it's over there, and I would imagine that it's very close. But Carl's group was really the instrumental ones in making sure it was how they wanted it to be.
It wasn't just La Cienega, it was a whole lot of people really involved in caring and willing to participate. And it's exactly the same kind of model we're going to try and develop with some of our water projects here in La Cienega, where you're very inclusive. You allow people there's two ways people can participate. They can be actively involved, come to the meetings and talk and share things, or they can be passively, and we'll just send them information and allow them to review things that we're doing on a regular basis, so they're a part of what we're doing, and they can veto things. They can say, hey, this is really stupid, you need to look at this differently. But that kind of collaboration is what made that process work so well. And again, it's everybody kind of played their own role, but it came out with something I think is pretty amazing, and really is an example for other communities to follow. That process of working with government agencies, with communities working with government agencies, is if government will give you a little leeway and allow the community to kind of take the control and touch base and make sure that they're within the guidelines or within the scope of whatever the county or city require, is how you move forward and how you do things that and then one of the things that really comes out of this, once you're finished with this, everybody looks around and says, hey, this is pretty cool, we did this together, kind of stuff. And that to me is the mark of success. And it's just the way we need to do things from here on out, folks, because there is a challenging world out there, and we're in the water challenge arena. And believe me, our task is huge, but it's one of those things, if we start just continuing to talk, continuing to communicate, continuing to educate people. And I think so much of this is people that don't realize what they're doing. I mean, one of the things that we're really pushing for in our community is everything done in Spanish, because we have a sizable Mexican immigrant population. They have no clue that the water they're pulling out is limited, and they do things that they would do in their homes back in Mexico or wherever they came from, and it's different here. And I think once they understand that, they'll become active participants in helping to do what we can to protect our water sources. So That's kind of where we're at. And I just, again, but it took, in all honesty, it took people like John and Michelle with the county who were kind of gave us that freedom and took a little bit of a step back and said, okay, go for it, guys. And we used them to keep us in line, that we didn't go too far afield or do things that weren't really appropriate. So it was a good process, and something I hope we can continue to do and continue to duplicate in other realms. Anything else right now? I mean, one of the things I do want to talk about, and I'm glad Kier's here, because we did tours. I took a total of 5 people. I think that just took 5 people on tours. We stopped at Kayadebra Bridge. We went to Ed Siri's old place, which is now Jay Christie and Kelsey Kolar's place. And we went to Kier's place in El Cañon. Then we stopped at, actually went by Green Tractor Farm, and then we ended up at Colandrinas. And I really think that's kind of a good exposure to all of kind of the water issues and things that we're dealing with within our community, both from a personal but also from a traditional perspective. And Kier, some of the stories, this is what really makes these tours, is being able to stand with Jay Christie, and he talks about this property and the way the river runs through and winds through his property is, number one, very cool. And he's talking about different plans and things he's going to do. And he thinks that, thank you, Christine. Thank you. We'll be in touch.
Sorry,
Probably
guys.
see you this afternoon. See ya. Bye-bye. But, you've got Jay Christie, who's new to the community, who's talking about what he wants to do to kind of protect things. And he thinks that Ed overplanted and he did this and did that differently, and I wanted to make it more natural. And then we go down to Kier's place, and the stories of Alonzo Rael, I mean, it brought tears to my eyes. It absolutely did. And Kier and Carol had the absolute pleasure and privilege to meet this amazing man. And they carry his stories forward, and you sit there and talk about it, and you look out and you see the guy out there almost. And that photo you have of Alonzo is just absolutely amazing. It made me think that we need a photo out kind of wall at the community center, and we put his picture up there at the top. But that makes it. And then Colandrinas, we just kind of walked through the place, but I've talked to them, and they're going to be more, let's say, involved and be able to Corey Murchie, who is the water person there, is very interested in what we're doing. And next time we stop there, he's going to give us a little history and a little better understanding rather than just kind of walk through and seeing the place. It's an interesting time for sure. But those tours, I think, are really an opportunity to get people to understand what we're talking about when we talk about the lower watershed. And I have to say, I got some pushback from one member of the La Cienega Association board, and I know Kathleen will know who I'm talking about. But that I was opening the door to too many people coming into this area, and it was pretty quickly put down when people understood it wasn't like I'm inviting the entire public to come out and see our little area, but this is very selective and is specific to people who really have an interest and care about the lower watershed. And which means, John, you need to come down and I can give you a tour one of these days. It's really cool. I mean, and again, it's an opportunity to sit and talk to people who really have some pretty neat ideas, and neat experiences, and understanding this kind of special place called La Cienega. Anyway.
I have a quick question. Can I ask
Please.
one, just a short one? John, what I heard from you was that Agua Fria did a really great job at a master plan that's carrying them through many channels. and I'm behind the curve here, Carl, so please, but I'm wondering if there's something that needs to be done very specific for La Cienega regarding another level of long-term, a master plan regarding our water conservation to move forward. Is that what I'm hearing, or did I
Yeah,
make that?
absolutely. I mean, that's the water master plan. And this is, now,
Okay,
again, these are little pockets here. We've got the well monitoring program over here.
Right.
That's beginning right now, and we'll see where that takes us. Then we have the pipeline coalition, return flow pipeline things happening, which is a number of tasks that involve La Cienega. So that's over here. Next, we come up to us, and it's going to be us and La Cienega looking at a water master plan and identifying all the different areas that we want to include in a water master plan. And that goes everything from septic, it goes to restoration of wetlands. I mean, all those things can be to me, can and should be involved in our water master plan. So that's down the road, but it's a very important element in terms of what brings all of this kind of together for our community. And hopefully it'll be an example for other communities to be able to follow and look at themselves. But the real key to this, and I'm going to beat this dead horse for a long time, is the key is hydrogeology. We have to have information about what water resources are. And when Christine talks about all the different communities in Santa Fe County, you better believe it. And each one of those have different water sources and different challenges. And so that to me just becomes, another element, something that Michelle gets to figure out at some level. She's going to be seeing all that stuff. So anyway, any other questions, any other discussions, folks?
Just to kind of respond to Kathleen a little bit with something specific, Agua Fria knew what they wanted to accomplish, specifically protection of groundwater by eliminating cesspools and septic tanks as a top priority, because it did garner a lot of financial support, even though there are many other ways where they could have accomplished groundwater protection. And I think that it's important to have those components identified in the master plan where it's comprehensive. But at the same time, you'll have something like this. I don't know if it's visible, but you see there's a list of the streets, and then there's an overall map that identifies where each project is at within the community. And then there's a cost estimate for each one. So the project area and the combined costs are identified here. And so if a group of people on a particular street really want it addressed, they pull out the report, it's available to the public and to the community, and then they go talk to their representative and they say, I talked to everyone on my street and we need $480,000 and we can get everyone off of cesspools that are on the street. That's what I've seen work incredibly well. And ultimately we like it whenever the community is active, because we'll have to go get easements from them, and it's a lot easier whenever they wanted us there versus whenever we're trying to tell them, oh, this is good for you, you should just be thankful. It doesn't work so well that way. And so I see how well it has worked, and where people are not excited to have a sewer line in their road, we don't push it. It's in the list. If they decide they want it later, it'll be there. And we'll tell them who to go talk to and how much they could expect. And because we'll have done it enough times, we'll have gained some familiarity with where the process is and how long the construction takes. But I think the master plan for La Cienega region is going to be unique. I don't think it's going to have this cookie cutter approach. Is going to have like a whole, like instead of a list, it's going to be like a starburst. It can go in 12 different directions. but
It will be.
the same end products, and whatever you're particularly interested in, if you want to do the conservation thing, if you want to get people off of groundwater, if you want to do water lines, whatever the interest is from different groups, they would have the data they need to then go to their legislators and say, this is specifically what we need to address this particular thing.
And I'll just add that in Agua Fria, they have a champion in Commissioner Hansen, and in La Cienega, obviously you all have a champion in Commissioner Bustamante, who is, integrated into your groups because of what she's done for the community in the past, serving on the board and things like that. And now being elected to the commission, she's like the perfect person to be that commissioner champion that helps to go to the legislature and get the money once there's a plan in place.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? So Maury, you're going to give us an update on Santa Fe Watershed Association. What's going on?
Sure. I don't have a presentation or anything prepared, but I can give a few updates. So we're doing a lot of just like small operational updating and stuff right now. I think I'll have more concrete updates by our next meeting, but we're working on kind of tightening up and updating a lot of our programs. So I'll have updates about that. And then also of definite interest to this group is that we're wrapping up our final report for our U.S. Bureau of Reclamation Cooperative Watershed Management Program grant, which is a phase 1 planning grant. The plan itself is not involved in this phase 1, but it was a way that we reached out to many of you as knowledgeable and engaged stakeholders within the watershed to identify some priorities. And of course, those interviews now happened a long time ago, but we worked with a specialist out of Utah State University to, again, as many of you know, go back and kind of rank these priorities using this quantitative, qualitative software. And through COVID and all this stuff, we've had some delays, but we'll be releasing the report and we'll be releasing it to the public and to everyone in March. But basically, the report hopefully is going to be laying the foundation for future planning efforts, going or fitting into a lot of the conversations that we're having about the importance of having plans and having plans at different scales that, just like John was saying, to refer to go back to qualify for more funding, that we can work together to be able to apply for specific grants and really have a trajectory of where we want to go and how we want to work together. So that's really where we're seeing this initial part fit into, and we'll be then moving into kind of which direction do we want to keep going through the kind of reclamation channels for more planning, or do we need to support other entities in kind of spearheading future planning, and we play more a supportive role. So I'm sure I'll be reaching out to some of you to kind of get your feedback on that more specifically, but to kind of give you a preview of what's in the plan. We really tried to focus on some of the more general takeaways and themes that are a little bit longer lasting, considering that our initial interviews at this point happened in 2021. But I think it is a pretty clear confirmation that there are a lot of shared priorities in our watershed. Thanks so much for joining us, John.
John.
Yeah, so there are a lot of shared priorities for us in our watershed. In general, folks are concerned about climate change and wildfire and erosion and invasive species and water scarcity. Water scarcity is unsurprisingly a very top issue for most folks, but excuse me, when we drill down a little bit into the kind of what do we do about that, is where some of the kind of disagreements arise. But I think that the way we're framing this report is, again, the importance of spaces like this, and like all of these collaborative spaces that we've been discussing in this meeting, to be able to talk to each other and find common ground and work together. And we're framing this in terms of what's called interactional capacity. That a key finding from our report is going to be that folks belonging to general interest groups like business, government, environmental, and civic nonprofits, things like that, that people's kind of understandings and opinions differ quite a bit within those interest groups. And a lot of times when we're entering into conversations, we assume that everyone in those general interest groups have similar thoughts. See you, Michelle.
Thanks, Michelle.
But are finding that there's actually more diversity within interest groups, and that folks within those interest groups have more in common with other folks in other interest groups, I think is a really good confirmation that we can find common ground. There are these similarities, there are these kind of potentials for deeper conversation, for more collaboration, just like we've been talking about. And we're going to kind of wrap that up with an emphasis or our recommendation that more resources are put into collaborative groups across city and county, government, non-government, public, private, etc., because that is really the only way that we can enhance the resilience of our communities and of our watershed moving forward. And so I know that seems extremely obvious in many ways, that, yeah, duh, we have to work together, and water doesn't have boundaries, and all of that. So, but hopefully having this report in an accessible form can help contribute to these future planning efforts that will then make it possible for us to access and implement more and larger projects for the benefit of many communities within our watershed.
Well spoken. Very well said. I'm serious. That was excellent. I mean, and it's one of the things, we're going to repeat this message a lot, and we're going to keep repeating it and keep repeating, because that's what we're going to do, because that's how we're going to do this collaboration. So no, it's just that moment, and one of those times where it really is coming all together, and we need to take advantage of it. So pretty exciting stuff, Maury. Thank you. I don't know why I'm tearing up. Anyway, anything else for today? I know we had a little bit short because Fred didn't join us. And here's, I told Maury this already, but so Fred Herbrand is the engineering supervisor for now called the Paso Royal Water Reclamation Facility. And I think any of us that worked on the Pipeline Coalition know there are a number of tasks that are involved the facility in the RFP that will be sent out shortly. So I asked Fred, hey, have you heard about this? And he had no idea that this is headed his direction, because there are a number of things that are directly address that facility. And so I'll be happy to kind of educate him. But this is where there's an organizational issue, in that you have one part of the city doing this, and then another part of the city not having any clue that all of a sudden we're going to be asking for how do you improve your plant? Are you going to be able to really produce clean water rather than and deal with the emerging contaminants? All those things are things that we're going to ask him to do, and he has no idea it's coming his way, but he will shortly. But that's an organizational issue within the city, which becomes a little bit interesting. But I'm really excited that John's going to be on that side now. I mean, to have that kind of connection to someone who really did some kind of neat things for the county that I'm hopeful that things will be good going forward. And Patricio, how are you doing? I haven't talked to you today. How are things in your area, in your world these days?
Hello, good morning, Carl. Everything going well, thank you. And it's funny, I was just waiting till the end of the period to make my comment, but I did have a question for you as you were discussing the new well monitoring program.
Okay.
How often are you guys planning on checking for reads here on your new well monitoring program?
That's a great question. I'm not sure. They were doing it twice a year at one point. And it was usually fall after the growing season and before the growing season, if I remember correctly. But I'll find that out and let you know. That's a good question. Absolutely. And I think that'll
Awesome.
probably increase because I think we're going to increase the number of wells being monitored. And so we'll get you that information for sure. Good question, Patricio. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, because I am over in actually the Nambe, Poake, Chisuke area, part of the Admont project.
Okay.
And so we're actually having to turn in those reads twice a year as well.
Okay.
But here with the city, with our domestic well program, we actually have yearly reads, and those are due right around February. Is when we get those, and we usually send a letter out to those well owners reminding them to please send out their yearly reads to us right around this time.
Would you have all of the well owners in the city? Are they
We do
required
have
to-
we have a lot of them. Honestly, Carl, we do not have all of them. There are
Right.
some that did sneak under the table, or some that fell through the cracks that we unable to track down. But we do have the majority of them based on state engineers records.
Exactly what the county needs to do. That's exactly what we need to do, is to get, that's a great one. Identify the well owners and do, yeah, okay. That gave me a whole lot of stuff to think about, Patricio. That's pretty neat though. I'm glad the city's being that proactive.
Yeah, sure thing. If you have any questions about our domestic well ordinance or program, feel free to reach out, Carl, and I'd be happy to help.
All right. Thank you, Patricio. So Kier, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing well. We're both doing well. We're staying warm, looking forward to spring coming. Cornerstones is still involved with this partnership with BLM to continue working on the Rael Acequia, which is great. They've done great work so far. And they're also trying to push things along in terms of getting the old Rael Ranch House plaqued and on a National Historic Register. But it's a
Nice.
long process. So as you know, it
Oh,
takes
boy.
forever. But they're working on it and things are moving slowly, but they're moving.
Did I hear something about a radish festival?
Yes, that was in Oaxaca. We went down for the holidays and it's quite amazing. I suggest you all go down there and see it. It's incredible.
Pretty cool. Oaxaca's a neat city too.
It's great. It's really wonderful. And it was great to get warm and get away from the cold for a bit too.
But Radish Festival just seemed like a kind of unique experience for sure.
Well, they sculpt these radishes. They're grown specifically for this festival. And this past year was the 125th year of this festival. And these things are just beyond description, really. I mean, they're incredible what they sculpt and produce.
Like big one, big.
Yeah, some of them are 5 or 6 feet long, 6 feet tall, and they're all made out of radishes. They're carved and shaped and put together. And they have to spray them with water all day long because it's so dry. Otherwise, they'll all wilt. So they're constantly spraying, water bottles on them to keep them sort of plumped up and hold their shape. It's amazing. They're nativity scenes as well. Yeah.
Wow.
Carol
And
knows more about it than I do, but yeah. Sorry?
radishes?
Radishes, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I guess
Yeah.
it's not sacrilegious. Okay. Anything else today, folks? Thanks as always.
Thank you.
Keep the faith and we'll be in touch. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Maury. Thank the Watershed for hosting us. See you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Hey,
Andy.
Andy.
Take care.
Right,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.
Bye.